Up next is a panel discussion on financing solar amid economic headwinds. I would like to invite Subrahmanyam, Pulipaka, CEO, National Solar Energy Federation of India, to moderate the discussion. Over to you.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all of you to this very interesting panel on financing solar amid economic headwinds. Today, India is at a very interesting juncture where we are world's 5th largest country when it comes to installed solar capacity. We have an ambitious target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030, out of which almost 60 to 70% is going to come from solar energy. Indian solar installations grew 17 times only in the span of last 7 years, and India still remains the most attractive destination for solar investments in the world. Investments in solar in India have been at an all-time high in the last 2 years, even amidst the global pandemic of COVID. Today, we have a very interesting panel of experts from different financial institutions, which are bilateral and multilateral, who will give their insights and take us through what it means for India or what it means in financing India's next leg of solar energy revolution. With this, I would like to welcome all our panelists today. Firstly, we have Mr. SAITO Mitsunori, who is the Chief Representative of JICA. Welcome, Mr. Mitsunori. We also have Mr. Martin Lux from KfW. Welcome, Mr. Lux. We have Ms. Chandrima Sinha, Vice President, Invest India. Welcome, Ms. Sinha. We also have Mr. Manav Bansal from Neev Fund. Welcome, Mr. Bansal. So, throughout this discussion, I'll be asking our panelists about their insights on India's renewable energy journey so far and what it takes for India to achieve its ambitious yet pragmatic targets. First, I would like to start with Dr. Martin Lux. Dr. Lux, as KfW, you've been part of various high-figure investments in India's solar journey so far. What, according to you, has been the driving factor for these investments? And where do you look at the new innovative concepts of solar ecosystem thriving in this funding scenario?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm really very pleased to be part of this panel and to share my thoughts with you. Let me start with a kind of a heretical question. You were somehow sketching a very positive picture of the overall world economy and solar energy. And I think this is very much true. That's why I asked myself, are we really facing economic headwinds at this very moment? Or is it that all the environment is really supporting a change and a move towards overall energy transition? We have liquidity in the market, also in the Indian market. We have a stable GDP growth, as you were already mentioning, in India and worldwide. And in general terms, we also have a very conducive policy worldwide that is really supporting renewable energy. There are bits and pieces that might lack, but I think in general terms, I would rather say that there is a tailwind than a headwind for renewable. What we really need at this point in time is renewable energy grid integration. That means facilitating really the transition from fossil fuels to an overall scheme that is able to provide energy throughout the day, throughout the years with renewables. That means we have to work on 3 pillars. No? We have to work in the policy framework. We have to look at how to further develop technologies, and we have to develop the markets. Drivers of innovation is technology and markets, but policy needs to be conducive to go ahead with this. We as KfW have been supporting energy transition in India already since many years. As a matter of fact, we started more than 50 years ago working in the energy sector in India. And we have three pillars: renewable energy, where we support through direct investments and through credit lines, but also through programmatic support, the establishment of solar power plants, wind parks, and also hydropower plants. Then we have the sector of power transmission and distribution, where we have also one flagship program that might be known to everybody, supporting green energy corridors, and we are still working on this, bringing the energy to the real centers for demand. And logically, the weakest link of the chain, supporting the discom sector. And we are also working strongly in this respect. And nothing would be more, or nothing is more important than the last part that I want to mention. It's energy efficiency. It's energy efficiency that is really using, also leading also to cost reductions all over the value chain. No? And coming to your concrete question now, yes, I think we are supporting very much the new endeavors in the sector. What we do and what we need and what investors need is minimizing the risk and or getting maximum returns. When we see that we have a GDP growth of around 8% per annum at the moment, we have to just confirm India is an attractive market, and there is commercial viability, there is technological, we are living in a sector that, when it comes to solar, is already major. It's a major technology, and it's also socially acceptable. At the same time, we see that India is ranked as top one when it comes to renewable energy attractiveness interest index, as stated by the recent report of E&Y. So yes, the overall scheme is good, but at the same time we are seeing there are also challenges. For example, the introduction of basic customs duty that really creates uncertainty for investors. We have also the risk of tariff division, where the renegotiation of PPAs is somehow also threatening the investors. And we have gray areas, like I mentioned it already, the discom, which is the weakest link of the chain, and with lacking creditworthiness, logically also investors have some kind of reluctance to get involved with discoms, and that's where the main bids are now basically done by SECI and NTPC, somehow limiting also the market. Coming back to these innovative solutions, we have agro-PV, we have floating solar. For us as a bank, it is so important to get involved in these endeavors, but at the same time, we also have to see how to manage the risk. Floating solar, there might be, and there are for sure also environmental risks involved, and we have to be sure that this is addressed properly, and we have to be sure that we are also following the standards, not only as a public or state-owned bank, but I also think in order to avoid stranded assets, also the private sector is very much obliged to follow international standards when it comes to environmental and social. Agro-PV, yes, we want to do this. What we see so far is, unfortunately, there is no real bankable size inside yet, because agro-PV is to involve so many different sectors, needs to address agriculture, needs to address farmer organization, needs to address land use conflicts, marketing of produce, PPAs at the same time. So it's kind of complex, and we would be very much happy to be able and to finance this also through credit lines, for example, with EREDA, but we are not the ones who can leverage this. That is really the market that needs to be be ready. What we can do and what we are doing in all these endeavors is supporting this also through scoping studies, through feasibility studies. In certain, to a certain extent, we are also able to do some kind of viability gap funding, and in general terms, logically, our concessional finance. I hope I was able to convey my main messages now, and yeah, happy to also follow up with further questions.
No, Mr. Martin, the three pillars you have mentioned are of absolute importance and priority to India. And it is very heartening to see that KFW is also trying to promote innovative technologies that focus more on the spread while they are on growth. Now, I would like to go to Mr. Mitsunori, who is the Chief Representative of JICA. Mr. Mitsunori, JICA has been an integral partner in India's growth story in various infrastructure sectors, and renewable is not an exception. So how do you see India's renewable market, especially the solar market today, and what are your plans from an investment perspective in this India's solar ecosystem?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Subul, and thank you for other participants to very important, significant time with me. Before answering to your question, let me briefly state that this year, 2022, is a very memorial, important year for Japan. I mean, for Indo-Japan, because this is the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between India and Japan. Japanese side, together with the Indian counterparts, will be celebrating a lot this year, together with India's, of course, 75th anniversary of independence. So throughout this long relationship between two countries, JICA also has a long history of cooperation, which started in '97, and since through lending project, technical cooperation, we have been assisting basically increase of production capacity, generation capacity. And we spent nearly $15 billion, approximately 1 lakh crores since 2007-8. And through this, we have contributed to India's generation capacity enhancement at the tune of 12 gigawatts. And as for renewable energy, 7.0 gigawatts so far for renewable energy projects, such as wind power, solar power, and also hydro and pumped storage kind of hydro stations. Now, let me answer to your question on on 1st of February, Ms. Sitaraman, Finance Minister, delivered Union budget. And throughout her speech, we clearly observed that there's a clear policy direction toward low carbon society. For example, solar power, EV, biomass, as well as development of urban transportation, which is rather emission reduction kind of approach. Anyway, government's policy direction is clear. We'd like to welcome that, and let me assure you that as a bilateral agency, JICA, just like my friend from KFW, all development partners like us are committed to support India's policy, India's journey towards net zero emission before 2070s. Now, as Mr. Mr. Lex pointed out, now there's relatively quite a favorable and conducive environment for investing in solar power or wind power generation. And of course, there are certain issues which needs to be sorted out, just like just mentioned earlier. But basically, good environment is here, and JICA is, as it has been doing, JICA is ready to mobilize more financial support in that area. We have, on sovereign side, we have long-term lending to the tenor of 40 years in the longest, with a very concessional interest rate. I think this kind of concessional long-term funding is definitely required, so that India will set a broad and robust path toward 2070 net zero. So concessional lending for sovereign side. We also have, just like KfW, we have a private lending window. So yes, we are very much keen to invest through loans and investment, direct investment for individual power generation project. In such context, I think I'd like to just point out one thing, one issue, one window of opportunity for JICA's another support cooperation. Massive and accelerated investment in solar power, wind power. Those are, of course, essential for greater generation capacity. However, at the same time, it is also important to deal with the issues such as fluctuation of frequency and voltage, grid protection, and also supply demand management required by massive interaction of very variable renewable energy, including the solar and the wind. So there must be a very robust and articulated in the same time policy at the side of the government of India as to how to consolidate, how to enhance grid capacity, robust and flexible grid to accommodate very viable, variable power generation output. So we are ready to support government of India on this front. We have sent an individual expert to CEA, government of India, to their policy formulation. This expert also support individual project finding to consolidate to consolidate grid resilience, and he also supports promotion of zero energy buildings. I think this is other part of our support for better enhanced power utilization. So I think this is more or less the answer I would like to share to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitsunori. It's very encouraging to see JICA's interdisciplinary approach towards investing in solar. not only just in the energy generation, but also the ancillary part, the quality part, power quality part. And we are very sure that we'll see more and more investment from JICA in the near future. Now, going to Ms. Chandrima Sinha, who is from VP of Invest India. We have heard from Dr. Lux, Mr. Mitsunori, about how they see India as now the place where all the action related to renewable energy is there. And it is no doubt to say that India still remains as the most attractive destination for renewable energy investments, and solar, of course, is given in that. So what factors do you think were instrumental so far for us in holding that first position very, very tightly, and what should we do to continue this streak of high net investments which can help India get closer to its climate goals?
Thank you so much, Mr. Subrahmanyam, and thank you also for this opportunity to be part of this esteemed panel. As the speakers before me highlighted, and we have been recognized by the entire world, as somebody else also pointed out, we are ranked very highly on the Global Attractiveness Index for RE. And in terms of we are the third largest economy in terms of the investments and usage in the renewable energy space. So there have been a combination of factors, and I think the world is very well aware of the role that India has played in the renewable energy space in the recent years. And we started by setting some very ambitious targets. As you know, the 20 gigawatt target was raised by 80% in 2015 to 100 gigawatts, and then subsequently to 175 gigawatts. And what is going slightly unheralded is how we have consistently achieved these very ambitious targets. And now the goal is that by 2030, we have raised the target by even more. So it has been a combination of factors, as I said, a very clear direction, which has been recognized by JICA and KfW both, that the political economy and the political leadership has set the country on a very clear target of achieving very high, ambitious renewable energy targets across all subsectors, whether it be solar or wind or hydro. So in that respect, there have been a number of policy decisions that have taken place. And what is helped for us, particularly in the solar sector, is we have been blessed by the natural advantage of having 300 days of sunny days. So in terms of the solar sector's attractiveness, India ranks high. And starting from the National Solar Mission and initiatives where state governments have been mandated to ensure that percentage of their energy requirements is fulfilled through renewable energy. Even in the smart cities mission, it has been mandated that they have to have certain renewable energy requirements to be fulfilled. So each state needs to have one solar city. 60 solar parks were highlighted. These were some of the initial decisions that also attracted a lot of the global players. So also on the policy side, 100% FDI was enabled without any clearance required, so that automatic clearance also helped. Additionally, there was the duty structure had been revamped. I think the question of, I think the speaker before me highlighted that might actually lead to policy uncertainty, but I think the government has very clearly announced much ahead when they would be changing the duty structure. And this has been done with a very clear vision of making India, self-dependent, so reducing our import dependency. So from 1st April, that revised duty structure is coming into play. And that has also given a very clear policy environment for our domestic manufacturing industry to come up, which has attracted bidders from not just India, but abroad. And as you know, we've had a very successful PLI in the end of last year, and that where 18 successful bids were received. And that has also been boosted by the outlay that has been given in this budget. So one of the PLIs that has been given further outlay has been in the solar module sector. So that outlay is now 24,000 crores. And related to that, even in this budget announcement, if you see, there have been a number of announcements that have been linked to overall renewable energy space, including thematic funds that where the government will have a stake up to 20%, but it will be completely managed by the private sector. So these funds would also invest in green opportunities. So the financial side has also been taken care of. I think what is also something to note is the amount of investments that have come in from the sustainable funds, the ESG funds have seen the institutional investors that have come in the last 2 years, and there's been a significant rise in the investments that the institutional investors have bought in. It is about 76% over 2020 to FY21. And that is also allowing our manufacturers to partner with some of the key funds. You've seen a lot of big global funds who have invested in the domestic manufacturing space. And many our retail investors are also able to invest in the renewable energy space. A lot of the ESG funds have been started by different broking houses, and that are also doing remarkably well. And I'd also like to mention that our startup ecosystem, which is fairly large, it's one of the, I think the second largest now, and there the estimate is that almost 20% of India's startups, India's incubators, are working on some kind of project that is related to climate sustainability. So overall, the entire economy is being boosted from the policy side. And at the same time, we remain one of the largest emerging economies. So the demand and the consumption of power in the coming years remains high. And the government's very clear commitment is that an increasing portion of this power is going to be met by renewable sources. So in that sense, the market is there, and all policy enablers from the financing side, the manufacturing side, and even innovation side is also in place.
Thank you very much, Sinha. And it is without any doubt, I think we have to agree that the policy ecosystem has been a key enabling factor in ensuring that India is where it is today when it comes to our renewable energy journey. Now moving on to Mr. Manav Bansal, who is the Chief Investment Officer of Neev Fund. Mr. Bansal, you have seen the ecosystem very closely in various roles. Now Neev Fund is also an integral part of the entire renewable energy ecosystem, not limited to solar. So when you look at the decentralized ecosystem of solar or renewables, where do you see the bottlenecks in financing them, be it rooftop, C&I, or how are the risks there, and do you think we can do anything to mitigate that? Because that is a sector we generally don't talk. We only talk about 100 million above, but even that sector is something that needs access to affordable capital.
It's a fascinating question, Subbu. Thank you so much, and thank you to the other panelists for giving me the honor to share this with you. First of all, I must acknowledge SAITO-san there, particularly because he's an esteemed investor in JICA, and with backing of people like JICA, we will be the largest homegrown climate-focused fund in the country, something that Ms. Sinha also mentioned. So very proud of that. It's important, before I answer your question, Subbu, it is important to understand the role that we as Neev see playing. Neev means foundation in Hindi. And in many ways, we actually are happy to lay that foundation for some of the sectors that we invest in. We did that successfully in a grain silo business. We did that successfully in commercial C&I business. In fact, we invested in a company, and the happiest people were the competition to that company, because they came and told us, now that you invested, the sector has become investable. So it clearly then leads us to the fact that you do need many more Neev fund equivalent who are then able to take those early stage investment risks, not at a grid scale like we said, that is like you so rightly mentioned, a cost of capital game, and we don't really need to create those alphas there. But places like the CNI space, places like particularly what you mentioned, residential rooftop, because that has a potential wise perhaps exceeding the CNI space, and there has been no investment there as of now. We can talk about the policy positives and the challenges till cows come home. We, surprisingly, that first private equity investment happened in so 12 years ago, and 12 years later we still kind of pushing the same strings as we were 12 years ago. But that is the story of India. It is always 3 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back. We learn, we move forward, and then we try and create a conducive environment where people come in. The other thing I wanted to bring about is what has worked in the last 12 years. If you look at CNI space, and Subbu, perhaps you would be best aware to know that, what really helped bring down the tariffs was availability of debt. And a large part of it was because of the successful World Bank line, and I see Dr. Lux there, the KfW line with PNB. Those 2 lines, particularly the State Bank of India line, ensured that the end consumer, the CNI player, were getting the product at a price which was then competitive compared to what they were getting from the grid. As we move forward, I would encourage the 2 gentlemen on the panel today, plus the others, to look at similar products for residential. Now, obviously, then it is incumbent upon market participants and equity players like us to make the best use of that, but only when the equity side and the debt side combined with the policy environment come together can an industry take off. So, Subbu, I'm not sure I fully answered your question, but I hope I did try and address some parts of what you asked.
No, you have answered the question on point, and I think it is very important, like you're mentioning, the way the viability was found in C&I sector. That is, I think, a template that we should use to create more funds, more access to affordable capital, so that the distributed sector also will thrive. So bringing in Mr. Mitsunori here again, we have seen, particularly if you look at solar industry, we have learned a lot from our Japanese counterparts. Dr. Lux was mentioning about floating PV. The only 2 countries we talk about is Japan and Germany. And today we are going big on green hydrogen. And even there also we have only 2 reference points. Where do you see the role of upcoming investments in these niche, innovative technologies, which of course are not in isolation? When you talk about green hydrogen, solar is very much part of it. When you talk about solar plus storage, again, solar is part of it. So where do you see investments coming from a bilateral development agency perspective from you?
So as I mentioned, JICA, as well as probably other bilateral donors, we have set a couple of various supporting tools, technical cooperation, sovereign long-term lending, and private lending. So as for technical cooperation, Japan has quite good technology and good know-how in this area. Although like other countries, this area has still a huge. There are so many challenges, and we need to tackle not only by one country, but in a collective approach among countries. But anyway, Japan through JICA will be able to share and transfer Japan's good example technologies towards so that solar or renewable market can be more prosperous in terms of technology and in terms of policy formulation. So JICA is really ready to do that. As for sovereign lending, so while the production side is mainly driven by private private activities, there's still a huge area in which a government has to play the biggest role. Just like mentioned, stabilization, enhancement of grid capacity, and also a massive, relatively huge investment like pumped storage. And for this area, we are really very keen to mobilize our sovereign lending resources. Recent example of our sovereign support for renewable energy is one pumped storage project in West Bengal, Turga Power Station. Maximum capacity would be 1,000 megawatt. As you know, how a pumped storage power plant works. So you can kind of store generated surplus generation in the daytime and at the nighttime, and also in the daytime through if there's surplus from solar, you can store it in that storage that plant. So I think 1,000 megawatt is quite considerable. We would like to see more and more approach like this through our funding. And finally, on generation side, so we will continue debt support, equity support with private partners. But one thing we keep in mind is as bilateral and the public governmental agencies, and we shouldn't work just like in other private lenders, private actors. What we should seek is sort of additionality, a supplementality of our support. How we can catalyze, how we can invite leverage to input from other partners. This is how we pick up our partner in view of magnitude, leverage, and also impact in the market, not only generation capacity, but also technical and the policy viewpoint. So one example we recently did is our lending to Tata Clean Tech Capital Limited. We signed a loan agreement last year for 10 billion Japanese yen. So it's 700 crore rupees. And this Tata renewable wing, it's a clean technology wing of Tata, has so far financed 10 gigawatt renewable project, more than 200 projects. So we are ready to associate with this such a key players in the market. Tata also, receives lots of support, lots of funds from private lenders. So our support can be we hope that our support can be kind of categorical to accommodate more and more support from private lenders. In this very same spirit, we are supporting Neev fund Thank you, Mr. Bansal, to mention about JICA. Yes, yeah, we are very much keen to work with those important key players in the market, like Neev Fund, to further develop, enlarge this market, not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of quality. Before forgetting the question, green hydrogen. Yes, as all of you are aware, green hydrogen is probably the answer, the solution so that the global community can really achieve real carbon emission zero society, carbon zero globe. So green hydrogen should be definitely game changer. But the biggest challenges are financial viability, affordability. So lots of efforts are being made to cut the cost of green hydrogen production by various companies, various institutes all over the world. As for talking about Japan, in the limited areas and circumstances, green hydrogen is put in practical, real commercial use. But Japan is not ready to kind of export or introduce in India green hydrogen, which is in a financially viable or affordable manner. But anyway, I think this is why there's a role that JICA can play. We actually are supporting to make kind of a liaison or a matching between Japanese private manufacturers institutes with counterparts in India, so companies and research institutes, including IIT, so that there's enhanced technical collaboration between those stakeholders. JICA will hardly put much financial support in that, but we are very much keen to bridge, those players on both sides, and yeah, eventually we can support. We can make small contribution to support those joint research or joint work. Anyway, yeah, we also, like I said, probably the keyword for us to further support the development of this market is additionality. So in that word in mind, yeah, we would like to mobilize every possible support so that India can realize zero emission by 2070. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mitsunori. I think the key word that you used, additionality and supplementing the efforts that are going on, I think they'll go a very long way in not only realizing India's climate goals, but in ensuring that qualitative and sustainable renewable proliferation happens. Coming back to Dr. Lux, well, I will not ask you about green hydrogen, but let us look at the distributed segment or the MSMEs that we're talking about, which Mr. Bansal also mentioned. That today in India, we have achieved the growth, but when it comes to renewable energy, the spread and the growth, both are equally important. And solar, of course, by the virtue of it, it can be produced where it is consumed. So in this decentralized ecosystem, the role of SMEs becomes very vital. And as our Honorable Prime Minister says, MSMEs are backbone of Indian economy, and solar is not an exception there. So from a bilateral fund perspective, investment agency perspective, where do you see the influx of funds going through SMEs? Are there any bottlenecks, and can we do something to streamline that, especially in the case of solar or decentralization?
Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting question. And as a matter of fact, this is really in the core of our hearts. Small and medium-sized enterprises all over the world. And as you said, it is a backbone of the Indian economy, and maybe even more the backbone of the German economy. And yeah, there's where really our heart and our strength lies. I want to just address once more what Mr. Mitsunori was saying. I think one thing that we always have to take into consideration as development partners is this additionality. Make sure that we crowd in rather than crowd out the private investors, that we do not replace this kind of engagement rather than really developing the markets and the competition in the markets. No? When it comes to, and yeah, maybe I also would like to add, we as a German financial corporation, we have also different instruments like JICA as well. We can work with KfW Development Bank directly with the government. We work through the government and can reach to the private sector. We can work really directly also with equity involvement through KfW DEG. And we have very large engagement also in import-export, facilitating through IPEX, KfW IPEX, where basically not only German technology, not only German enterprises, but also international enterprises can be supported if it really contributes to climate, to the achievement of climate goals and global goods. No? Let me also pour a little bit water into the wine. As Mrs. Chandrima Sinha was stating, we are talking, and you also were stating, it's about 500 gigawatt that need to be reached in 2030. When we go on with the same pace as we are going at the moment, we are not going to reach it. So at the end of the day, we would need to add each year 50 gigawatts of renewable energy to the grid, where we have now at the moment 10, 12 gigawatts addition per year. So that needs to be multiplied, and that needs to be even more than this 50 gigawatt, because we have to take into consideration that the demand of energy will increase in the future. And coming back to your question, utility scale renewable energy will be also key in further reaching these goals. At the same time, we all agree that decentralized solutions will need to be further promoted, be it on private houses, solar rooftop, or maybe even better, promoting rooftop solar in the small and medium enterprises. Still, we have been trying this. It's not that we did not try, but it's easily said, but not so easily done. I think one main problem is aggregation. Really get it to a scale that's also bankable, that is supportable, and looking also a little bit at the risk. No, we have very, very different or very differentiated ownerships. People cannot be sure what will these enterprises survive? What happens then? What happens then to the assets? How is the risk taken over? So there's really so many questions in it, where we also need the strong support of the government in order to regulate this, but also more, I would say, more knowledge, more awareness in the banking sector to address this properly. And you see, it's not like blaming or people, but that is what I also think we have to create this kind of awareness that also these smaller and medium investments can be financed through the banking sector, taking into consideration the different risk the profile that is there. Let me also mention one thing. We as KfW Development Bank really have to follow also international competitive bidding, and as the same with procurement. And to a certain extent, that is also hampering our possible support to supporting these kind of national schemes, where there's always this domestic content requirement, which to a large extent also limits our possible mode of scope of action and scope of interaction. I think this also needs to be taken into consideration, and we would be happy to further promote this also in different states. But yes, and also co-finance possible programs that are existing already on the state level, if there is this kind of possibility. Coming back to, or I would like to elaborate a little bit further on one question. There is a huge opportunity also for the small and medium enterprises to really tap further into this renewable energy, because when we look at it, the three main costs that the enterprises have is labor, is energy, and is transport. No, and here is where they have a huge potential in order to really reduce their costs, increase their competitiveness by really further engaging in renewable energies, but also, I keep repeating it, in energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is really something where you can reduce cost and reduce CO2 emissions also directly. And what we can do, we can, through our support, through concessional loans, through viability gap financing, through scoping studies, through accompanying measures, technical assistance, further promote these markets, no? And also further promote the policy. We can also, or we are even developing something together, for example, here with other partners, like risk guarantee mechanisms that to a certain amount are able to buffer this kind of risk. So there is lots of opportunities for us there. And I think we are very eager to support this. And we think that this is also, again, it will be a key element of further promoting energy transition, and especially when we look at the introduction of smart grids, renewable energy integration on a decentralized level, where we also could introduce a decentralized storage solutions and all this stuff. So yes, we are very much interested, and I think it needs to be further developed in the future. But yeah, it's not that easily done as it is said. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Lux. I think as you pointed out, Germany has a very vibrant SME ecosystem, and I think we can take some lessons on how to promote the ecosystem here. And you rightly mentioned, the opportunities are endless, and the scale with which we want to grow can only happen if we have a vibrant SME ecosystem here. Now that we are on the topic of decentralized, going back to Mr. Bansal again, now all of us will agree that plain vanilla solar and decentralized is almost at its saturation point. Now it's solar plus storage, solar plus green hydrogen, everything. So do you see innovative financing models emerging for financing the decentralized options of integration? Or should there be innovative business models in place so that innovative financing models can come and finance these business models?
That's a fascinating one again, Subbu. I think the answer lies in both getting together. But just like the other people on the panel, our focus continues to remain on finding solutions at the SME end of the story, rather than the large end of the story. Now, and why I mentioned this, Subbu, is because we do believe that large end of the story, wherein you're talking about the grid and in case of hydrogen, the refineries and the fertilizers, is where the cost of capital comes into play. The SME end of the story is where the innovation, the service, the innovative business models come into play. And if we together come together as an ecosystem solution provider, access to debt, access to equity, access to good set of governance and policies, I'm sure we will figure out 5, 7, 8, 10 companies who will then lead the SME end of it. And a lot of outputs come which feed into the policy, which then feed into the large end of the thing. So yes, is financing required? Yes. Do I personally see a bank financing in the next 12 months? Perhaps not. Perhaps the first set of financing will be the equity and the risk capital, followed by hopefully some of the bilaterals taking a leap of faith and taking leadership position. We hope that it is Dr. Lux or SAITO-san or some of equivalent of theirs who doing such wonderful work. And then followed by the NBFCs, and then finally the public sector banks. I think that will be the story. But sooner that story plays out, the better it will be for the sector. What do we see from the government? From the government, obviously, what the government has done is to come out with enough deal pipeline for equity holders to take that view and take that risk that, if we were to commit to a certain sector, there is enough in the sector, and the government will continue to push that sector for the deals to come through. I think that is what we would like the government to do, and I think they're already doing that quite successfully. Perhaps at the large end of the story, maybe not as much at the SME end as we would like them to do, because CNI is a place where we like to play and create innovation. That's what I think. So let's see how it plays out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bansal. And I think it is without any doubt we can state that the next round of innovations will happen in the distributed sector, especially in the SME segment, which will ensure that we scale up our installations. Now, coming to Ms. Chandrima Sinha, we have heard Dr. Lux, Mr. Mitsunori, Mr. Bansal talk about their experience so far, what are their plans. Now, from Invest India's perspective, which is the front face of any investment in India, and I'm sure we have, I was reading that Invest India also got recognized by the world as the world's best investment promotion agency. So what should we pitch to the bilateral and multilateral bodies about the opportunities that we have today for the next 10 to 15 years, so that we make use of each and every dollar, euro, yen that's coming to India and make India truly carbon free country in the next 40, 50 years?
Thank you, Mr. Subrahmanyam. So it is, as I said, we've talked about the challenges, and I think Mr. Bansal also highlighted that, I think we need to focus on the cup half full rather than the half empty. So what I'd like to highlight that the government has already created even the institutional facility with like NIIF and now the debt financing, the NABFID coming in to provide that area of financial support. And that has also boosted additional FIIs coming in, the Ps, the sovereign wealth. A number of changes have happened over the last 2-3 budgets, if you see, where that ease of investment, so to speak, has been enabled. And I would like to highlight another key thing that happened in this budget, where the government highlighted that large infrastructure projects would now have to also have a renewable energy play. So I think the FM highlighted that the Ken Betwa link project, and that is supposed to include 103 megawatts of hydro and 27 megawatts of solar. So similarly, there are a number of projects that are more than 500 crore, and there is this area would now have to be enabled with the help of SAITO-san and Dr. Lux. where the large key infrastructure projects can have this renewable energy component very nicely fleshed out. And as you know, the government has already increased by almost over 35% the capex rate. So this is one area where if this can be mainstreamed into the kind of work that is going downstream in the central agencies or the state implementing agencies, where the renewable energy becomes a mainstream component of projects as they go forward. That is another huge area. The second is that the storage space has been given, battery storage space has been given the infrastructure sector status. That is going to allow developers or companies to get further attractive lending, because now it becomes a priority sector and that gets, so as we talked about that, those innovative models of solar plus storage that can come in. And in terms of the distributed, maybe at the MSME level or even at the city level, the rooftop grids, there is a great opportunity to work with the cities. Now we have 100 cities which have CEOs. They are working in almost a private kind of, that is the entire objective of having those smart city limiters, where it is in a government setting, but they're working in a kind of very private sector mode where you can partner with these CEOs and there is room for capacity building. And that is something where Invest India has already started. We've started work with some of the multilateral agencies to develop a green pipeline. So as part of the, to take from the greening of the national infrastructure pipeline to figure out which can be the green pipeline, we started conversation with all our partners, which are the state governments, on how we can help them come up with green policies and green pipelines, and also have capacity building at the city level. Many of the cities don't even know that they can actually apply for these funds. So that is where even Neev and SBI and all my fellow panelists can partner with us, and we can take this and mainstream it down to the lowest national, subnational level. So that there is great opportunity, the demand is there, the intent is there, we just have to find the ways and means. And as I think Dr. Lux pointed out, the need for bankable projects, and we understand that investors would need bankable projects, and how we can further boost that pipeline of bankable projects is an area that the government is fully cognizant and focusing their attentions on.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sinha. I think we're almost at the end of our time. But before I conclude the panel, I have one small brief question to all the panelists. We've heard a lot today from all of you about the status of financing ecosystem in India. Where do you see the opportunities and the way ahead? In one sentence or in one phrase, can you quickly tell me or tell the audience, what is it about India's solar journey that is exciting to you or that excites you for the next 10 years? It can be a part of the solar ecosystem. It can be an ancillary part. It can be a landscape policy, whatever it is. But what, according to you, excites you when we talk about India's solar story? Maybe from the financing perspective or in general, so that our audience will have something to take back. We'll start with first with Mr. Mitsunori.
Thank you for a very tough question. What is exciting to us is, like I mentioned, clear and very robust direction demonstrated by government of India, including Prime Minister. So now everybody is aware that the direction is this. So the remaining is in how and when and So a very robust and broad policy setting. I think I would like to first welcome, and I would like to give big hands to that.
Thank you, SAITO-san. Dr. Lux.
For me, I think the most striking and the most exciting aspect of also working here in this environment in India is that when we look at the global challenge, climate change and carbon zero, yeah, nothing can be done without India. India will and is being a core actor, a core player in this. And I'm quite sure that not only market-wise, but also technology-wise, they will further develop more lead in this. And I very much hope that also this will somehow be reflected in a little bit more ambitious policies when it comes to reaching these targets. But I think here we are really in a very exciting endeavor, and we are really in an exciting country where we see that in general terms, things are conducive. But yeah, we still have to work, and we are prepared to support this pathway.
Thank you, Dr. Lux. Mr. Bansal?
I know what excites me every day is this unlimited potential for innovation underlying one sun, one world. It's just unlimited potential.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Sinha.
Thank you. The going last means that my ideas might have been repeated, but I think I was just coming to that India, as you know, has played a role in a global sustainable world, and our mission at the International Solar Alliance has been that exactly one world, one sun, one grid, and same for the country, one grid. That is, I think we all aspire to. So going forward, that I think the grid has been highlighted, and that is the remaining frontier, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sinha. It has been a wonderful pleasure and privilege to be here and moderate this panel. The kind of insights we have received today, I'm sure the audience will have something to take back, and they'll only go back filled with optimism about India's success story. As we speak today, 1 out of every 5 installations in the world is coming in India. At the end of this decade, 1 out of every 3 installations, that is 1/3 of the total world solar capacity, will be based out of India. We are at the verge of transitioning from a government-driven market to a market-driven market, and that is going to add gigawatts. Like Dr. Lux was mentioning, we need to scale up 5x. If done right, we can scale up 10x, 20x. And as all of you have mentioned, India is today the land of opportunities. India is the land of innovators, and in the 21st century, as it is rightly said, innovation is integration. So with integration at its key, integration of renewable technologies with storage, integration of innovative financing models with the renewables, and of course, integration of the ambitious targets with ambitious policies, I'm sure India will be rightly in its path to achieve our ambitious solar energy targets. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a real privilege to moderate this panel. I would like to thank you once again for giving your valuable time to Mr. SAITO-san, Dr. Martin Lux, Mr. Manav Bansal, Ms. Chandrima Sinha. Thank you very much, and looking forward to having all of you again on ET platform very soon. Thank you one and all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for sharing your perspective and all the knowledge around the topic. Now let's move further to the last session of the day. Stay tuned, everyone.